Taiwan's health authorities ease the mask mandate and restrictions on foreign arrivals. EU support for Taiwan. A vice president of the European Parliament says Taiwan's future should be decided by its people. The UK sets a new heat record and wildfires wreak havoc across Europe. And we're in Taiwan's capital, where some of the world's top badminton stars are competing in the newly christened Taipei Open. A warm welcome to Taiwan Plus News. I'm Ian Kavat. Taiwan recorded almost 27,000 new domestic COVID-19 cases today. With the country's outbreak slowly getting under control, authorities are starting to loosen restrictions even further. Mask mandates are being relaxed and some of the country's border restrictions. Eric Gao has the details.
Pandemic restrictions in Taiwan are gradually being eased. With case numbers down, the country's COVID-19 response task force is lifting the face mask requirement effective immediately for several categories of people. These include bicyclists, scooter riders, and those who work outdoors. Health officials say mask rules could be relaxed even more in August, depending on the situation then.
比较空旷的地方的时候会脱下来，如果人多的地方我还是会戴起来，因为家中还是有一些小朋友之类的，不希望被感染。
It's not just rules on Taiwan citizens that are being relaxed. Border restrictions are also being eased, allowing more foreign arrivals into the country. From July 25th, people under the following categories can enter Taiwan once they've applied for a special permit: foreign volunteers, interns, missionaries, those visiting for language or religious seminars, on working holidays, or attending international exchange programs. Taiwan's newly appointed head of the COVID-19 task force says this is part of efforts to reopen the country to international arrivals.
未来我们的确是要朝向这个开放观光、振兴经济这些方向去走。
For now, all international arrivals will still need to quarantine for 3 days. Wang says the government will eventually lift the requirement, but it probably won't happen in the near future. Alex Chen and Eric Gao for Taiwan Plus.
A vice president of the European Parliament, Nicola Beer, on Wednesday admonished China's threats against Taiwan. Beer met Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen on the second day of her 3-day trip to the country. She is the first sitting vice president of the European Parliament to visit Taiwan in an official capacity. It comes after Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs on Tuesday rebuked the incoming EU-China envoy. Jorge Toledo Ambiñana had indicated support for the peaceful reunification of China and Taiwan. But Beer said Europe was deeply concerned about China unilaterally changing the status quo with Taiwan.
This must not happen under no circumstances, under no pretext. Only the Taiwanese people can decide on Taiwanese future. We call on the People's Republic of China to refrain from its threatening gestures. We admonish China not to destroy Taiwan's blessing, but to take an active and constructive part in maintaining and securing the current status quo based on mutual and respectful dialogue.
For more on the EU's relationship with China and Taiwan, reporter Rick Glowett spoke to Zhuzha Anna Ferenczi, an assistant professor at National Donghua University in Hualien and a former political advisor to the European Parliament.
Given that the EU ambassador to China has made these comments supporting the unification of Taiwan and China, what do you think this means for the EU policy towards Taiwan?
First of all, the comment of the ambassador that the EU supports a peaceful reunification does not in any way reflect an official EU position. So there is no EU-level position on Taiwan's status or on questions of sovereignty or on reunification, as Beijing likes to put it, just as there is no position on how exactly the EU would go forward with Taiwan. We see that there is an interest, there is an awareness, and there is a willingness at this stage to explore ways to cooperate with Taiwan, and also at the same time to assert the European members and member states' right to do so, to expand cooperation with Taiwan.
Do you think Europe and the EU is moving towards a more defined policy when it comes to Taiwan?
So I believe that the European Union, in light of what just happened with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the awareness that we have on the table and really high on the agenda, that the European Union is vulnerable and it has strategic dependencies. And in light of what this means for the future of Europe, I do believe that there will be a serious and honest discussion that will allow member states to converge on how to work more closely together. Because what damages the European Union's standing in the world and also in its own neighborhood is the lack of unity and the lack of consistency and coherence. For now, we have assertive language, and we also know that what is happening in Europe at the moment will also impact EU-China relations in light of the strategic partnership between Moscow and Beijing.
Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen says the country will put more resources into developing green energy. It's part of Taiwan's plans to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Taiwan has experienced several blackouts in recent years as suppliers face increasing demand for electricity. But Tsai says the country is committed to moving away from fossil fuels.
我们持续研发氢能、地热等前瞻绿能的新兴技术，希望建立坚实的绿能产业供应链。
One of Taiwan's biggest food conglomerates has agreed to buy Carrefour Taiwan for almost $1 billion. Uni-President Enterprises will win the right to use the French retailer's trademark in Taiwan, along with control of 340 stores, Stash Butler reports.
Uni-President Enterprises is everywhere. The Taiwan conglomerate already runs the country's biggest convenience store, 7-Eleven, and Starbucks. Now it's taking over Taiwan's second biggest hypermarket, Carrefour. Uni-President and its subsidiary already own 40% of Carrefour Taiwan stocks. In a deal signed on Tuesday, they'll buy the remaining 60% for $970 million. Carrefour is slimming down its Asia operations to focus on Europe. And that suits Uni-President just fine. The conglomerate's chief financial officer says the deal will boost Uni-President's retail offering.
收购后，统一集团的一个全通路的策略将得以更加的完善。
But the deal will mean control of Taiwan's food retail market falls into even fewer hands. That's something Taiwan's Fair Trade Commission will investigate before it approves the sale. In 2020, Uni-President's 7-Eleven took almost half of convenience store sales. Carrefour Taiwan, meanwhile, accounted for almost a third of hypermarket sales, second only to Costco. Carrefour also controls Wellcome, which had a 6% share among supermarkets. But Uni-President says it's not creating a monopoly.
量贩店跟超市的部分跟便利商店基本上是一个完全不同的一个业态。那所以我想说，这个应该不至于公平会这边的相关的一个审查的一个作为的一个需要。那这个我们会尽全力来配合。
Uni-President expects the Commission to approve the deal by the middle of next year, handing one of Taiwan's biggest food companies an even bigger slice of the market. Asnaya Zhou and Stash Butler for Taiwan Plus.
US Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi is set to visit Taiwan in August, according to the Financial Times. If the trip goes ahead, Pelosi would be the first sitting US House Speaker to visit in 25 years. She will also be the highest-ranking US government member to make an official trip to Taiwan in recent history. Pelosi cancelled a planned stop in Taipei in April after contracting COVID. Taiwan Plus reached out to Taiwan's foreign ministry for confirmation, but they said they had not received any information about a Pelosi visit. Beijing opposes any official interaction between US and Taiwanese officials and warned of a forceful response.
如果佩洛西众议长访台，将严重违反一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报规定，严重损害中国主权和领土完整，严重冲击中美关系的政治基础。
The former US Secretary of Defense has told Taiwan's leaders the country needs to do more to deter an attack from China.
Well, I think that Taiwan needs to make a significant increase in its defense budget. Secondly, I think the strategy of Taiwan needs to emphasize asymmetric warfare against its larger neighbor. Third, it needs to procure or produce the capabilities consistent with an asymmetric warfare approach. I believe that Taiwan needs to both lengthen and toughen its conscription. That means to have young Taiwanese boys and girls serve at least 1 year, if not longer, in their nation's military.
Currently, only Taiwanese men have to serve 4 months of compulsory military service. Mark Esper was speaking during a trip to Taiwan, representing the Washington-based Atlantic Council think tank. He served as Secretary of Defense under former US President Donald Trump. Taiwan's premier said Wednesday that the government has been strengthening national defense and will continue to review and improve the preparedness and training of its military. Continuing a week that has already seen a flurry of Taiwan-related diplomacy, a cross-party Taiwanese delegation is on the 3rd day of a trip to the Czech Republic. For more on this, our reporter James Chater spoke to Matej Šimošek, an executive director at the Central European Institute for Asian Studies in Bratislava, Slovakia.
What's significant about this delegation in terms of the Taiwanese group's members?
First of all, the delegation is quite high level, I have to say, since it's being led by the president of the Legislative Yuan, Mr. Yossi Kun, as well as the delegation being a cross-party one, as it comprises not only the MPs for the governing DPP party, but also from Kuomintang and the TPP, which is quite a novel development, I think, since until now, whenever we were seeing this kind of delegations and diplomatic outreach towards European countries, especially from the CEE region, until now it was really comprised mostly of DPP personalities and not from other political parties.
The Czechs took up the EU presidency at the beginning of July. Does this trip taking place soon after this have a particular relevance?
I think it is very relevant. The Czech presidency of the EU has clearly stated that the Indo-Pacific policy and the Indo-Pacific area, one of the core priorities for its next 6 months of the presidency of the EU Council, by engaging with Taiwanese representatives so closely after the presidency started and when the Indo-Pacific agenda is still being set, only can help, I think, Taiwan in making sure that the Czech presidency will keep its focus also on Taiwan within the Indo-Pacific policy, which is something I think that we could have already clearly expected as we are increasingly seeing different EU bodies engaging positively with Taiwan, not only the EU Parliament, which has, of course, been the most vocal, but recently also the EU Commission, which has invited Taiwanese representatives to one of its activities, the Civil Protection Forum. This clearly signifies that Taiwan is being considered as one of the key partners for the EU in the Pacific when it comes to promoting Europe's interests in the region.
There's been a flurry of delegations between Taiwan and European countries in the past year. Are these delegations having a real impact? And what else would turn this warmer diplomatic sentiment into real political action?
Yes, these delegations are quite significant. First of all, they are helping to put Taiwan higher on the agenda in the receiving states. But of course, we have to ask whether it is enough to put Taiwan on the agenda and to engage in only, let's say, symbolic gestures. I think it's also very important to keep focus on more practical developments. I think it's noteworthy to say that The cooperation in the areas of various high-tech industries, including semiconductors, has been receiving a lot of attention on both the Taiwanese and European side, where we have already seen some practical developments, such as the Taiwanese government offering scholarships to students from different European countries to study the semiconductor technology in Taiwan, where Taiwan is obviously the global leader.
Coming up, brick by brick, Japanese colonial-era buildings are given a fresh lease on life in the southern port city of Kaohsiung.
This is 我们台湾人要送给台湾的礼物。
我们都清楚，我们都在一起在完成一件事情。
这是我们的根。
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. Let's get a roundup of some of the other international news. The US is warning that Russia is preparing to annex parts of Ukraine's territory. According to White House intelligence, Moscow is already exerting its influence in regions taken by Russia in eastern Ukraine. It's forcing people to use the ruble and apply for Russian citizenship. US National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says this follows a similar playbook to the annexation of Crimea. Russia took the Black Sea Peninsula of Ukraine in 2014.
Already, Russia is installing illegitimate proxy officials in the areas of Ukraine that are under its control. And we know their next moves. First, these proxy officials will arrange sham referenda on joining Russia. Then, Russia will use those sham referenda as a basis to try to claim annexation of sovereign Ukrainian territory.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin was in Tehran for talks with Iranian and Turkish leaders on Tuesday. It is Putin's first international trip outside of the former Soviet Union since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine in February. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has shown support for Putin's war, calling the regional security alliance NATO a, quote, dangerous entity that must be stopped. But Turkey is a NATO member and has been among the countries providing support to Ukraine. High on the agenda was unblocking exports of Ukrainian grain, something Moscow said it was willing to facilitate if sanctions on its own grain exports were lifted. The Reuters news agency is reporting that China is seeking to block a United Nations report on human rights violations in Xinjiang. UN High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet made a fact-finding trip to the region in May and pledged to publish a report before she steps down in August. Rights groups accuse Beijing of abuses against the local Muslim Uyghur population, including the use of forced labor. Over the past few years, there have been increasing reports of Uyghurs imprisoned in internment camps. China has denied the allegations. According to Reuters, Beijing sent a letter expressing, quote, grave concern about the Xinjiang report. The news agency cites sources saying that China began circulating a document in Geneva late last month, asking countries to show their support. Nearly 2,000 people have been killed by a record-shattering heat wave sweeping across Europe, and thousands more have been displaced. Ryan Hoko-Patrick has the story.
London's burning. As the nation recorded its highest ever temperatures, swaths of the capital went up in flames. Wildfires ripped through villages on the outskirts of London, fueled by the intense heat and dry conditions.
It was just amazing how quickly it spread. It went from the first house, and then within a couple of minutes, it had jumped the second house, and then it started burning through the back gardens. Within about 15 minutes, both houses were completely up. Then it carried on spreading to the next door house, and it was just unbelievable how fast it was spreading.
Topping out at over 40 degrees, the temperatures shattered British records. Across the Channel, parts of southern Europe have been ablaze for over a week. Tens of thousands of people have been forced to abandon their homes in France, Greece, Portugal, and Spain, where the mercury hit close to 50 degrees. Over 1,700 people in Spain and Portugal alone have died from the extreme heat. In Berlin, officials from 40 countries gathered to discuss how to stay focused on fighting the increasing impact of climate change, including worsening heat waves, while the world reels from the economic fallout of the pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The UN Secretary General implored countries to take collective action.
Greenhouse gas concentration, sea level rise, and ocean heat have broken new records. Half of humanity is in the danger zone from floods, droughts, extreme storms, and wildfires. No nation is immune. Yet we continue to feed our fossil fuel addiction. What troubles me most is that in facing this global crisis, we are failing to work together as a multilateral community. Nations continue to play the blame game instead of taking responsibility for our collective future. We cannot continue this way.
European nations at the meeting vowed to fulfill their climate targets, even as the war in Ukraine prompts some to seek new fossil fuel sources to make up for shortfalls in Russian energy deliveries. As more of the continent goes up in flames, the urgency of the issue for European leaders has never been clearer. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick for Taiwan Plus.
Customers in Taiwan are crying foul as grocery stores are running out of eggs again. Taiwan just went through an egg shortage in February as farmers claimed the weather was too cold. But now egg producers say the conditions are too hot for the chickens. With temperatures at almost 40 degrees Celsius, production of eggs has fallen by 10 to 20%. The price of eggs per half a kilogram has also risen by around 7 US cents. Taipei Open, one of the bigger international badminton tournaments, is back after a 2-year hiatus. Our reporter Bing Wang was there on the first day of the event.
After a 2-year hiatus because of COVID-19, the Badminton Taipei Open is back in action. Almost 300 players from all over the world will play in this tournament, and it's one of the biggest international competitions around the world. Here in Taiwan, all eyes are on world number 2 player 28-year-old 戴资颖。
戴资颖是因为从我小时候就是在大学的时候练习打球的时候，她就已经是台湾人中非常有名的女单选手。
当然是戴资颖啊，小戴啊。
Dai is considered one of Taiwan's national heroes. She has won many gold medals and held the world number 1 badminton position for 200 weeks. That's the longest streak in the World Badminton World Federation history. That means she was the best player in the sport for almost 4 years. World-class badminton players from 27 countries will face off in a 6-day contest, hoping to bring home a grand prize of $500,000 US. Chris Ma, Bing Wang in Taipei for Taiwan Plus.
And staying on sport, Taiwanese tennis star Jason Zheng has taken a spot among Asia's top 3 highest-ranked players. Since the end of last year, Zheng moved from 280th in the world to 86th after winning 3 ATP Challenger Tour titles. It's not all been smooth sailing for Zheng. He says while it's been a good year, he has been homesick as he was away from Taiwan for long periods due to his tennis commitments and the COVID pandemic. At a press conference ahead of the upcoming US Open, Zheng said he hoped to make it to the second round of the competition for the first time as a tribute to his parents.
那时候就是他的手也有一点受伤，因为工作的关系，所以我就觉得非常辛苦。然后就是谢谢他们一直以来对我的支持，然后都不离不弃这样。
The Tainan International Mango Festival has arrived in southern Taiwan. The touring fair that aims to promote Taiwan's mangoes will make stop in Danei district for the first time. A variety of locally produced mangoes and other fruits will be on sale in the small agricultural town. The Tainan city government hopes the event will promote local tourism, drawing on the popularity of mangoes. The government has handed out discount vouchers and organised games with prizes. And there's free food on offer. Tainan Mayor Huang Weizhi says the festival opens up more sales options for farmers.
你甲今年甲通路拍开，每年大出的时阵，咱就唔惊无人来甲咱买，所以平常时咱就要做准备。
The Japanese colonial period left a distinct mark on Taiwan's southern port city of Kaohsiung. Japanese-era architecture is still visible in the old quarter. Now, some of these buildings are to take centre stage at an annual expo, which kicks off next month. Louise Watt reports.
This building in Kaohsiung's old quarter, known as Hamerson, dates from 1933, when Japan ruled Taiwan. It's one of few structures from that era still standing in the area. It's also the first historical building bought by the port city in a court auction. It was privately owned, and the local government says it bid for the structure back in 2015 to stop it being demolished. Kaohsiung City has spent more than 6 years evaluating and restoring the historic red brick building. Now, from August, the public get to have a look inside.
2个新修复的场馆，包含爱国夫人会馆跟红砖街屋来启用，来呼应的这个城市的文化的厚度。
The 10-day expo kicks off on August the 5th and is being held in Kaohsiung for the first time. Authorities hope the opening of this and other Japanese-era buildings will leave a mark on visitors to the city. Ricky and Louise Watt for Taiwan Plus.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Ian Kavat. Finally, we leave you with images of ice pubs in the Czech Republic and France. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app. Stay safe and see you next time.